All right, so we have our small little, as I was mentioning before I hit record, our small little elite group of philosopher kings that are, or at least people we're all working to become honorable enough to meet the title, to deserve the title of philosopher king. And so it's been a few weeks. We haven't met up. The last thing we did, I guess you all should remember some of the elements, the important core concepts of the Philebus dialogue by Plato, on the nature of how to judge the good. What how do we utilize discernment, and what considerations do we have to develop in our minds to get better and better at passing judgment on matters that pertain to something very important, right? The good, something very metaphysical, but that requires a certain idea of harmony, a certain concept of the finite, the coexistence of the finite and the infinite that we find in all things, the oneness, and the infiniteness coexistent in all ponderable states of existence, both of the lower domain as well as the higher domain of reality, right? The domain both where things exist in the physical world that are bounded, in the world of becoming, as well as in the higher realm of eternal, immortal concepts, justice, right? The higher considerations that are transcendent of boundary conditions of space and time and of flux. So both of these things definitely have to be brought into play when we're passing judgment and navigating through this realm materially. And so Plato gave us a bunch of tools, a bunch of paradoxes, a lot of very fun things to play with. And um and Schiller is somebody who studied a lot of Plato. He's really somebody who immersed himself in the mind of Plato through the figure of Socrates. And this will come out a lot in as many Schiller writings that one might want to pick up. Any of his philosophical works, you'll get a real feel for that Platonism inside of him, and not the Neoplatonic perversion that we've heard so much about, but really the real thing. I've got a few visual examples I wanted to just showcase, 7 or 8 little images that I pulled up and put onto a PowerPoint just to play with a little bit before we jump into Schiller's actual writings. Before we do that, though, Quan, did you want to say any remarks or anything like that, or you want to just wait until we jump in?
Or maybe 5 minutes.
Yeah.
I would
Okay.
say that the fundamental teaching of Plato that we will find in Schiller tonight, because I think it's not demeaning to say that Schiller just copied Plato with his own words, okay? Because after all, what is timeless cannot be created 1,000 times. It's the same stuff, but with some personal peculiarity. So it is not at all dismissing Schiller than to say that he was a copy of Plato, and it's perfectly honorable, because once again, in the domain of timelessness, it's not the domain of time. When we say that you create some original form in the domain of time, it can be completely different. For example, the way people dress during the Roman Empire is not exactly the way the people dressed in the 18th century. Okay, that's in time. But what is in timelessness is always the same. Okay, I think that I say some in a certain way that tradition is not the worship of dead ashes, but the transmission of the inner living flame. So fundamentally, either in Plato, Confucius, or Schiller, what you find is the dance or the dialectics between time and timelessness, or becoming and being, or the lower trigram and the upper trigram, etc. And the causality is the awareness that would make you capable of having a meta representation of what has been put in your animal mind, because the animal mind is a recording biomachine, and there's nothing wrong with the recording biomachine as long as there is the presence of infinite awareness. So many things can happen to that biomachine, but if that biomachine has a presence or the presence of awareness that I would call in a more grandiose manner the inner living flame, that would be the center of from which you can live your time dimension with no problem at all. And it's only there that we can play or we can talk of playfulness. Okay, because if you don't have that inner living flame, that is the infinite awareness activated, because that is a something that is potential in all of us, but they are procedures, if I may call them procedures, or let's say education, ecut educare, what to bring forth what beauty, goodness, and truth from within. And beauty, goodness, and truth are simply names for three major steps of the discovery and the manifestation of that inner flame, that living inner flame. That's what makes your life a play from what happened in time. Because what happened in times, most of the time, doesn't depend much on us. But what happened in the activation of the timeless reality depends 100% on us. And you will see that Schiller, with his own words, will repeat the syllabus. And once again, is not dismissing him and saying that, because you cannot reinvent truth. You have to express it with your own words because you were born at a certain moment in time. I finish here for now.
Yeah, it's very nicely said. Okay. All right. So let me do this. Keeping in mind everything Quan just said, that's going to be in the back of our minds, floating over this entire conversation and reading. I wanted to just showcase a couple of visuals because this isn't really just a matter, ultimately at the end of the day, we need both theory and practice at the same time. So the senses have to also get receive a little dance. So let me just show a few samplings here of things I randomly put together, not randomly, but with an intention, but very last minute. I probably could have picked better examples, but I just found a few. So I've got a garden and something else, two other items, just in terms of some considerations of passing judgment. Because a lot of people are told, and I was always told this too, especially as an art student in university, that you really can't bring judgment into the realm of aesthetics. That beauty is truly in the eye of the beholder, and there's an element of truth to that. There's an element, but I would say just an element. It can get overdone. Schiller, as we're going to see, the first of his little essays here, it's an extract from something larger, is entirely about his theory of the beautiful, of judging beauty, and it's not simple. So the first thing I just want to showcase is one peculiar French garden. I didn't get the details. I could have. I did this so last minute. I didn't pull up the details for where these things are located, who did them. So don't ask me. I just picked up so purely visual. Here's a French garden. Okay, one of many. I've seen quite a few of these in France. Maybe not this particular this so elaborated as this, but I've seen a number of these things. Do you guys think that this is beautiful? Does it pass the beauty test?
Well, it passed the beauty test from the French perspective
From the
because
French,
the
I
French
agree.
God,
Yeah.
because from the French perspective, things must be ordained in a certain manner. Okay. The classical opposition between the French gardens and the English gardens or the Chinese gardens, for example, because of strangely, the English gardens are quite reminiscent of the principles of the Chinese gardens. And in the French garden principles, you have to express the law of nature in a very geometric pattern, which is obvious if you look at this image. In the British garden or the English garden, which resembles once again to the principle of the Chinese garden, of course, that you have to express the order of the universe, but it has to be done in a way that is not too geometric or too mechanical. It has to be done in a way espousing the natural curve of nature.
I like that. That's very well said. That's very well said. So of course there's cultural taste and tradition embedded within it, certain considerations that are the habits of various cultures that will shape the tastes of what different cultures do. This following garden could be, and I would not say that this is an ugly garden per se. I don't know what Schiller would say necessarily, but I wouldn't say that. Though there is something maybe a little bit overly geometrical for my taste, but is that me just coming at it from a Western perspective, or is there something universal? I don't know yet. This is another garden that I found online. This might be a French garden, also in France. If it were, then it would probably be an offense to certain French tastes. If it were somewhere else, what do you guys think of this? Is this an okay garden?
That's more like my garden.
Yeah, I know a lot of people who have gardens like that. Nothing.
It
You
has
can't.
I
more
used to.
function.
Huh?
Back in
There's more
Australia, I used to.
Hmm.
there's more function in it. Like
Yes.
I don't see a lot. There's a lot of flowers, but some are just for beauty. But I'm pretty sure there's other ones that are utilitarian, like herbs and
Yeah. I could see that too. Like
um,
you could really not see so easily how this would be a utilitarian thing. You wouldn't want to pick a flower or walk through a lot of these things or pick herbs. So that wouldn't be a
not at all.
whereas this
This
one you
one,
could definitely see that would be more likely the place where you would pick some chives or something and wander
but
about.
the geometric one is very well manicured.
Mhm.
Somebody put a lot of thought into it. Um,
Yeah.
I'm trying to think of the purpose, if there is a purpose to the first one.
I don't know.
Um, it's just very
The purpose of the first one is to manifest the glory and the majesty of the owner of the castle.
Yeah, it's a status thing. Definitely a
Would you put
status
it
thing.
under the heading of aesthetics? Quan, would you put the French one under the heading of it has a more aesthetical appeal?
Well, it depends of your. Here, I would say that both express a certain harmony. Okay, and it depends.
Yeah,
Harmony can be manifest in different manner.
in different ways, yes.
And the first French garden is for me clearly a manifest. The intention is to manifest majesty and glory. The second garden, the intention is to manifest a certain, maybe flippancy is not the right word, but it's a certain aisance, a certain easygoing character. Because there is a natural harmony manifesting
Yeah,
in the colors of the flowers and so on.
yeah.
Yeah.
Which is what we always aim for with the gardens that I had back in Australia.
Mhm. Yeah, it's not
It's funny
chaotic.
because my father was a very strong gardener, Taurian, used to love working in the garden. The gardens we had when I was a kid that I often worked in with my dad were more laid out in a sort of a formal way, concrete pathways and set beds and everything like that. But during the course of my first marriage, the houses that we had, we would be looking. We actually lived in an area where it was more appropriate. It wasn't totally suburban. It's sort of out on the outskirts of Melbourne, in a where the Yarra River flows, so it was protected.
Yeah.
In terms of what development could take place. Anyway, when I look at that garden and even the house, I'm looking at it and thinking, boy, it reminds me of one of the houses we had.
Mm. Yeah.
And then the other thing, Juan and Matt, just forgive me if I'm wrong. When I look at the French garden again, the geometric design, I mean, the very first thing that popped into my head was it seems to be that there are some fleur de lis patterns in there. Fleur de lis, I wouldn't be certain of it, but
I
because
don't
I'm not that certain of
I
that
don't
image, but it
necessarily
looks like it to
see
me.
yeah, I definitely see symmetry galore. That's for sure. I
Yeah,
don't necessarily see
yeah,
the fleur de lis so much, but
yeah.
definitely
I don't see a completed one. Yeah, I
yeah.
don't see a completed one. I kind of see petals and
Yeah.
bits of it, sort of thing,
Okay.
disconnected.
All right.
Yeah,
Sure.
the stuff between the two big triangles can be, let's say, with a little bit of imagination,
Yeah,
be construed as a kind of schematic fleur de
yeah.
lis.
Like some
Awesome.
jigsaw puzzle pieces. If you simply rejoin them a certain way, it would look more like a fleur de lis. Yeah.
Wow.
Anyway,
Okay, yeah. Yeah, definitely. But it has a lot of the elements of harmony, of symmetry. Not so much of utility, but definitely it's projecting status, grandeur. This one definitely there's an order to it. It's not totally chaotic. There's certain bouquets located in arrangements. There's definitely there's you could make out a walkway on two sides, but it's kind of it needs to be probably groomed a little bit. More definitely more humble. But also could be yeah. There's the third one here we have here is something from Tokyo that caught my eye before he started. What do you guys think of that one?
That's beautiful.
Yes, I'm going to be a little bit biased. It reminds of the Chinese gardens.
Yeah, I was going to say it has an Asian feel to it, doesn't it?
Yes.
Well, it's from Tokyo, and what Kwan is saying
Yeah,
is that they they lifted it from the
yeah.
Chinese aesthetic. Yeah,
After all, we civilized those people 15 centuries ago.
we might have some Japanese might enjoy listening to our RTF chats. This is also partially in good loving jest as well. But yeah, definitely there's a harmony to this Japanese garden. It's definitely got a utility. You can walk around. There's definitely an order. It's well kept. But I mean personally, it's my favorite of those examples.
Somebody put a lot of thought and effort into
Yeah, you can see that. There's a lot
um,
of thought. Yeah, planning, a lot of
planning,
balance. Hmm?
very much so.
I have to ask one question here, Kwan. What is the aesthetic behind Chinese gardens?
The idea is to be as close as possible to nature. So, as you see in this so-called Japanese garden, which is for me a Chinese garden, you can see water, you can see trees, and you can see maybe the sky and a pond reflecting the sky.
Mhm.
So even the bridge is not too monumental. It is something very small, smaller than the trees. So
Hmm.
everything that is made by human beings have to be smaller than the natural artifacts, if I may use a word artifacts here.
Mm.
Why would that be, Quan? Why
Uh,
smaller?
because nature is the cosmos. And once again, we go back to the lower trigram and the upper trigram. Human beings are part of nature. It doesn't mean that we don't have our own glory and our own human mind. That is specific in the sense that we can understand nature. But that understanding, of course, is to penetrate the laws of nature, but also to be in dance, in harmony of nature precisely. That's why if you look to Chinese classical architecture in gardens or in other stuff, it's very rare that you have buildings that would have more than 10 or 12 floors. Okay. And even if you have buildings having 10 to 12 floors, it would be disposed in such a way as to espouse the natural configuration of the place where those buildings have been built.
Yeah. And you're specifically speaking about classical Chinese architecture, right? Not necessarily anything that you because people might Google something about a building in China and find a bunch of ugly, tall, or not ugly, but very, you know,
Yes, of
giant
course. That
skyscrapers or apartment buildings that don't look great. But you're talking about the classical style of Chinese architecture, right?
absolutely.
Yeah.
And frankly, I have nothing against skyscrapers if it's done in a harmonious manner because we are in the 21st century. It's possible to have
Mhm.
harmonious skyscrapers in urban settings. Okay, there are many beautiful neighborhoods in Shanghai, in Beijing, or in Tianjin or Chengdu, which are very beautiful even without Chinese traditional architecture. So
Mhm.
it's a question of taste, and once again, uh, harmonic proportions can be applied to everything. But of course, the Chinese traditional architecture has given a certain manifestation of that beauty, which is not absolute in the sense that it's a solution, okay? As the French gardens is a solution for manifesting beauty, the English garden is another solution, the Chinese garden is another solution. And the what I call the everyday garden also manifests harmony. It depends a lot of the intentions, okay? once again, I repeat myself. The first garden is obviously manifesting glory and majesty, and the second one is simply manifesting an easygoing life in a comfortable environment.
So there's a
So
couple of other examples. Wait, let's put that on pause because as you can see there, I've got a few other pictures to show just to get us in the mood for what we're about to read, which is going to involve the theory. Okay, and I got a teapot. I got a few examples of a teapot.
oh.
This is probably made by the same artist. These two teapots, guys, think that this is
same design anyway.
It's a thing, eh? It's a thing. It works. It works. It's functional. It makes hot water and tea. Pour it. So it's functional. Would you guys say it's beautiful?
That's a toughie.
For me, yes, because because it's provocative.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
Because it's not the usual teapot shape.
Okay.
Yeah.
Is it possible that is one of them more or less beautiful than the other, or are they equally beautiful?
They're equally beautiful. In
I would
their
say
own
I would say
style,
that they're equally, yeah.
Yeah.
What about
Yeah.
compared to
for
this
someone,
one?
for someone more used to that kind of teapot, it doesn't mean that you cannot have other teapots designed in a completely different manners that would bring some harmony to your mind too. Okay, so there are no absolute solution, even if certain solution would be called classical.
Okay. Yeah, so we're looking at just the more and less. These are pretty much equal in terms of the degree of beauty we would pass on these things. And these two also. What do you guys think of these? Kind of cute.
Reminds me of prehistorical Chinese pottery.
Yeah, it's actually a modern piece, but yeah.
5,000 years ago. If you look at many modern stuff and you go to study Chinese prehistory, you wouldn't find the same kind of design.
Yeah.
Compared to the previous one, for example, if you go with a certain playfulness of interpretation of the previous one, I look at both of those and I'm seeing an animal.
You could see an animal, yeah?
I'm seeing a mouse or a cat or something like that.
I'm seeing an elephant.
Okay,
yeah,
someone sees an
along
elephant.
those lines.
Sure.
Yeah.
Sure, okay. What about
it has
I tend to judge these teapots like for me personally, it has to have function first before beauty because it's something you use.
Yeah, if it doesn't work, give me a teapot that doesn't work, or that if you hold it, maybe you scold your hand. That might suck. That won't be be a very good teapot.
The other one that it was like, who's going to clean that one when it gets dirty?
It's a good point.
That's how I think.
That's a good consideration. Yeah.
But other than that,
it's hard to know. If you could take the entirety of the top off, Kelly, not just the centerpiece with the knob on, the tallest knob, but the four corners of the top. If you could take that off, the cleaning wouldn't be so hard.
But yeah, it's a point. We don't know. We don't know.
Yeah, we don't know.
If it's got a smooth interior, it's one thing. If it's got a little, a bunch of these little cylinders all in the inside too, that would be annoying to clean. Sure, we don't know.
Yeah.
But those are factors. Those are factors.
Get an air compressor and blow the dust.
Yeah, that's your only choice.
I'd say a teapot is a tool. Like painting is not a tool. So there is beauty in the usefulness of a tool. So that's why teapot more useful, more beautiful.
Yep, that's true.
I agree, but I would like to bring at once an objection. Classical music, to a certain extent, or classical painting, or even a painting or music in general, if it reaches a certain level of quality, even if it's not classical, is a tool in the sense that most probably for the non-initiated, classical music is probably the most powerful tool to bring you into the space of infinite awareness. So in that sense, it can be a tool.
Oh, you mean in the sense that it has usefulness? It's not simply without use.
Yes,
right.
Because yes, you can.
But in terms of if we define tool as being something which assists us in the material world of the becoming, then it wouldn't be a painting or music wouldn't be a tool in that
Thanks for
sense.
saving
Oh
my.
yes,
Because
forgive me.
it's acting
Oh
on soul
yes,
soul
oh
to soul,
yes.
but it's acting on my
Forgive
soul. It's
me.
not acting on my
Back to the
body.
No,
rescue.
no, 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 no,
No, it's
no.
acting on my body.
We are manifest in time. So when you listen to a piece of classical music, you listen to that piece in time. The sound that impact your ear and your mind and your brain are in time. But the
Hmm.
miracle is that what is happening in time open a door into timelessness.
But that's where I'm saying, like, if we define it from the standpoint of like a tool as that which acts upon and fixes or makes better things in the material world, then I wouldn't say so, because the mind exists in the timeless higher realm beyond change. So the thing I'm listening
The
to the music
mind,
for is not for my senses to be moved, though the senses have to be moved, but it's the purpose is for the mind to be transformed or uplifted and the soul to be
yes,
uplifted.
I agree with you, but I still am not in. I think otherwise because I understand perfectly what you
Mm.
just said in the last 30 seconds. But time and timelessness are not separated. Once again, I come back to my Chinese hexagram. You have the three lines of the lower trigram, and you have the three lines of the upper trigram. It's the same hexagram. That is precisely the dance between time and timelessness.
So
One
what
has a certain function, the other has a certain function. But the
you're saying,
two are
like,
not the same, but they are in dialectical, intimate interaction.
I think what Quan means is that there's a physical tool, but there's a immaterial tool equivalent to the physical tool.
Yeah, the only thing that I want to say, we can make the distinction between time and timelessness and becoming and being, okay? As the hexagram from the I Ching shows perfectly. But what is important is not really the separation between the two, but rather the dialectical dance between the two. For the rest, it's a question of definition. And I understood you perfectly, Matt, when you gave the definition. But I'm just saying that it's not my definition and there's no need to be in agreement.
Yeah. Okay, I just wanted to get the different where we differed on our different definitions, but now I have a clearer concept, so that's good. Um, so we had a couple of examples of some teapots. I got a couple of other ones. Here's another one that some lady did. I don't even think it's finished yet, frankly. But it's a clay teapot, probably just out of the oven or about to go into the oven. Um,
Yeah.
yep, kind of nice, right?
And even like that, it's beautiful.
Yeah, it's got a
short
beaut.
and stout?
In a
Yeah,
simple way, yes.
yeah.
Yes.
Would you say it's more beautiful than this one?
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
Yes, because this one, the form, well, that's a question of taste once again, okay? I'm not saying that
Now
it's ugly, but it's not as beautiful as the other one in my taste.
More of
Does
a
it?
dinosaur.
Because this one is a little bit provocative, okay? To be provocative, for me, is a quality in art. So it's debatable.
Unless they were really trying to make a really elegant pot, and if that intention was there, it's not provocative. If they were trying to be provocative, it's provocative. um, but definitely, I do. Does everyone agree that this one just is higher on the scale, that it partakes in beauty
Yeah,
more than this one does?
yeah,
It
it
took
is.
more skill for the first one to be done. Really more skill.
Yeah.
The carving,
Probably.
all the symmetry and everything,
Hmm.
harder to do.
Hmm. Yeah, I think the
I
this
used to
Yeah.
this
see a lot of
handle.
these.
Hmm?
Hmm.
One of the places that I lived at was nearby a very famous place close by called Potter's Cottage
Hmm.
that used to run pottery classes all over the place. And they had a retail outlet in their small township. And you used to see teapots like this and, various things, mugs and plates, etc. And, some of
Yeah.
them were, as Quan would say, deliberately provocative. Some of them were a little bit more conservative. But it was always fun to look at the output because
Yeah.
most of it was from relative novices. There were a few long-term craftsmen at the Potter's Cottage that ran it, for years and years and years. It was a very famous institution. It's now closed. But
But it,
it was actually fun to look at the variety of shapes and forms of the same thing. How
it
many
would
Yes.
be
different ways can
interesting
you
to
make a
have
mug?
a woman's point of view.
That would be nice
Yeah.
if we actually had a
They
couple of ladies here to add their judgment. I agree. Um, all right. So we'll have to work on that. But yeah, just the handle as well sort of organically comes out of the pot a little bit more than this one as well, right? Sort of just more of an add-on. Though they both work. They both work, I'm sure. I got a third teapot here. Got a third teapot. What do you guys think of that teapot? Too much? Is it nicer,
Well, once
or
again,
what do you guys think? This one compared to this one or this one?
well, even if I like the simple one, I'm a show-off person, so I prefer the blazing one.
It has virtue, right? It also the glass is an interesting quality. The color functions now are a new addition. There's a certain S-ness, like a certain uh you probably need a different skill level to do something like this compared to the clay pot like this. Although both involve skill, you probably need a higher degree of
More
skill, I
skill.
would say. Yeah.
more time,
Yes.
More time,
more
more skill.
thought.
And the handle evokes a little bit a dragon, a schematic dragon.
Huh.
And I would say that the objects or the people, sometimes can be compared in the sense that the fact to be simple or the fact to be flamboyant or show off per se is not a quality or a defect. It depends if your flamboyant appearance or your show off appearance is in dialectical harmonious dance with your soul and your mind.
Mm-hmm.
That is the criterion of judgment for me.
That's nice. It's nicely said. And you can imagine this like this same design in a clay variation of it. So the same design one could imagine in a clay variation that would still be beautiful, wouldn't necessarily make the same effect, but could be maybe would be a little bit more humble, maybe. But there definitely it's very beautiful. It's strikingly beautiful. And this one's low res, but just add a little bit of this is my last teapot. What do you guys think of this one? I think it's beautiful.
It
But
looks
Absolutely.
ancient.
Absolutely.
do you think it maybe partakes in more or less? Is it a different kind of beauty in this one, or is it more or less beautiful than this one?
Well, I say that it's as beautiful one and the other. The first one looks more Chinese. The second one looks more Persian or Arabic.
Mm-hmm.
That
Yeah.
one looks more Chinese. That one looks more Persian or Arabic.
Right. Okay,
Okay.
cool. So we got our little taste of some teapots. Last little set here of four is stairs. I got four slides of stairs between these two. Does it matter? Do you guys have a preference? Imagine other than the fact that this one's more dilapidated on the left. It's obviously going through some. I think it's actually the
Yeah.
same house before and after, frankly. Um, but in terms of
I
the
prefer.
general design, what do you guys
Very
prefer?
open.
Yeah, I think you're right, Matt. It's the same house and
Yeah,
it's
it's the
an
same house
upgrade and
before
everything
after.
like
Yeah.
that. Yeah, and I have to say that the one on the right, the more modern one, kind of fits the aesthetic of the room a little bit more.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. The one on the right looks more mechanical, even if the one on the left is more dilapidated. I prefer the color and I prefer the curve.
Yes, me too. I would renovate the first picture and
I like the one
put
on
the
the
stair
left.
like that.
I agree.
Where
I tend to agree with Paul that this one fits the squarishness, like the aesthetic of the geometry of the place. Perhaps I'd have to see more of the room, but I agree with all of you guys that I would keep this curvature, this design. It's much more aesthetically appealing to me. So I agree with you
But they
guys on
they
that.
renovated the whole rest of the house,
Yeah.
and that looks like the stairs were left. It's like, what do we do with those now?
Yeah, something like that. Got another stair here.
I do that. I
Oh,
do stairs and floors for a living,
oh, you do.
and
Hmm.
and I have to. Well, I stand and finish. Like I put the color in,
Oh, cool.
and I'm kind of like an artist.
Nice, dude. You would preserve this one, or you'd go for this one on the right if you have this house.
The first one, like, but that's just my preference.
Yeah.
I'm into restoring like
Hmm.
old things to make
Cool.
come to life again.
Kelly, you're a man of superior taste.
Well,
It's a
it's a
dying
living.
breed. Yeah, the restoration of old things is not it's not a common job anymore to get
No,
that. So that's good.
In
Um,
1983, I was in Sacramento and the seat of government for California. I'm not sure what the house was, government house or something like that, but it had been newly renovated and all of the woodwork had been replaced to its original standard. And I have to say, it was one of the most beautiful buildings I've ever been in. It really was magnificent. I mean, it was a relatively recent renovation that I saw.
Mm.
The woodwork in particular, you know, curvature of stairs, all sorts of things, but it fitted the space.
That's good.
You know, the original design was being maintained, just upgraded.
I got three.
Styles also change over time.
Hold that.
Like
hold that thought. Hold that thought.
Okay.
Just because I got three stone staircases, and then we're gonna round it out for some Schiller. So there's a very old stone staircase. I don't want to cut you off. I just know that we have to read some Schiller today. That's right.
Fine. There's no problem.
It's pretty okay, right? I mean, it's a pretty okay stone staircase. Got some curvature and some straightness coexisting there. It's not bad, eh? It's got some dignity.
Beautiful.
Okay. Then we got this one. Which one do you guys prefer?
Wow. They're both.
Which one we can afford?
neither one. I don't think.
They're both very different.
Both are quite expensive.
Yeah.
Yeah.
They both appear to be part of castles or something.
Yeah, they're totally different. They're hard to compare.
Yeah, that's I think that's a very good comment, but I still prefer the second because of the curve.
Me too. But here's a challenging one because the last one here also has curve. But what do you think?
But the last one, is it not the Chateau de Blois?
Yeah.
Oh my God.
Oh, that's the one that's it's designed by Da Vinci. I remember that.
Yes. Well, I'm not sure, but it looks like the l'escalier en vis du Château de Blois. Yes.
Hey, if it is, you're a good guess.
Yeah.
Well, the last one is probably the most awesome.
Yeah.
It definitely has almost like a fluid quality, eh? Like it even though it's made of stone, it seems like it's just being twisted in front of you like a
yes.
It's very interesting.
L'escalier en vis, precisely.
Yeah, it's
very challenges in that one.
Looks like it's getting smaller. More higher you go, more smaller it is.
Yeah.
I think that's just perspective.
Yes, it is. From this perspective.
For sure. But compared to this one, I think we all prefer this one, right?
Well, the first one is an outside staircase with some dignity. I think you chose the right word, Matt.
Yeah, it's thick. It's got a little bit of elegance to it. There's a little bit of grace in the little side. You know,
a combination of form and function.
Yeah, it works. They both feel they work. So there's definitely, we got a sense that there's like all sorts of beauty, but certain things partake in beauty more and less, but it's not so easy because you've got the aspects of culture, time, purpose, function that are factors at play in discerning the more and the lessness of the beauty factors. It's not easy. And it can be done very irresponsibly. So just to get a taste of it, right, before we go into Schiller now. So let's do a stop share. All right, let's do somebody did they shared something in the chat. Oh yeah, Jean Sebastien saying Mirror Lake is awesome. Must be the perfect
it was about the third picture with the lake.
The Japanese garden.
Yeah, Japanese garden.
For sure.
The still lake is always awesome.
Yeah, absolutely.
Just before we go into Schiller, wondering, anybody knows Bo Burnham, the artist?
No.
Since we were talking about Teapot, he made a song, Little Teapot, really funny. You should look this up. Bo Burnham, Little Teapot.
Okay.
It's a 2015 show. You're gonna laugh.
Oh, okay. All right. I'll send a link if you can, and
yes,
I'll check that out. Okay. Let's do share screen, and let's see if I can find it. Here it is. Share. Okay. So you guys can see this screen here, Philosophical and Aesthetical Writings of Friedrich Schiller.
Yep.
Okay. So what we have here are a few little elements. They were all translated by William Wirtz, who gave us a really great class some weeks back on universal history in his new book. He's affiliated at the time, he was still working with the Schiller Institute, not any longer, but this is a really good translation. Um, I think Will Wirtz did these when he was actually a political prisoner, which has its own sort of poetic quality about that fact, too. Just keeping that in mind, that he was fighting for some very beautiful ideas and found himself in prison for some time, translating these works. So, and this was when he was working with Lyndon LaRouche and the political organization that got shut down some years back. I think everyone knows that story. So within this, there's a couple of essays, one of which is an excerpt which is titled Callias, or Schiller's Thoughts on the Beautiful, which all of this took place as far as the composition in 1793 that we're going to come to see by his introductory remarks that we will read. It's very short, but it's again, it's part of a longer piece. The second is Of the Sublime. This one is actually, I'm sorry, yeah, this one's translated by Daniel Platt. I'm sorry, they're not all Will Wirtz, Daniel Platt. And this is going to be dealing with, again, Schiller's concept of the sublime, which is not exactly the same thing that we're taught in philosophy or aesthetics courses today, of the meaning of this word. It's been a highly abused word. And I don't know if I have On the Sublime that I included, or if that's not amongst these essays. No, I didn't.
It has been included.
It is? It has been? Okay. On the
yeah.
As you scroll through,
of the Sublime,
Oh,
because of the Sublime is the text published in 1794, contrary to On the Sublime, published at the beginning of the 19th century.
Oh, yes. I thought that I had put both On the and Of the Sublime texts in here, but I only have Of the Sublime that I put in here.
Yeah,
okay,
well, it was not deliberate, but I think that it's a good idea to start with Of the Sublime.
Yes. Well, let's do that then.
Because it's much closer to the syllabus, meaning it's much more fundamental, even if the other text is a good one too.
Well, yeah, and this is the one I was we were originally going to read this, and as I was reading through it, I was like, oh my God, this is pure Philebus, which is why we put this aside and decided to go for Philebus instead. And so it's good that we're finally getting back to this. So for today, we just need somebody to read nice and slowly, and whenever needed, we could just stop, pick apart an idea if it's overly challenging. But who wants to read the opening remarks by Will Wirtz on the piece on Callias, or on the Beautiful?
It's I would like to read only the introduction. Okay.
Yeah. Okay. Sure.
Okay. So, philosophical and aesthetical writings of Friedrich Schiller. Introduction by William Wirtz. In a letter to his friend Christian Gottfried Korner on December 21, 1792, Friedrich Schiller first indicated his intention to advance his own theory of beauty in a work to be entitled Callias, or On the Beautiful. Between January 25 and February 28, 1793, Schiller and Korner engaged in a dialogue on the subject in the form of an exchange of letters. Schiller had read Immanuel Kant's Critique of Judgment in March 1791, and during the winter of 1792-1793, gave a series of lectures on aesthetics at Iéna University. The Callias letters thus culminated a period of intensive study by Schiller of various theories of beauty, and prepared the way for his writing on Grace and Dignity, which he began in May 1793, and the letters on the aesthetical education of man, which were written in the late autumn-winter of the same year. In the Callias letters, Schiller writes that there are 4 theories of beauty. The first one, the sensuous subjective theory, of Edmund Burke, among others, which incorrectly derives beauty merely from physical causes and confuses that which is sensuously pleasant with the beautiful. Two, the rational objective theory of Baumgarten, Mendelssohn, and others, which incorrectly defines logical perfection, meaning proportionality, regularity, etc., as the cause of beauty. The third theory, the subjective rational theory of Kant, which correctly distinguishes between the logical and the beautiful, but which, as Schiller says, seems to me to miss fully the concept of beauty. And finally, the fourth theory, the sensuous objective theory, which Schiller himself advances in the Callias letters. In Schiller's theory, proportionality, regularity, etc., do not cause beauty, but rather are merely the material of the beautiful. What constitutes beauty is not the sensuous perfection of an object, an action, or a character, but rather the freedom with which its sensuous perfection is expressed. For this reason, Schiller writes, I am at least convinced that beauty is only the form of a form, and that which one calls its matter must by all means be a formed matter. Perfection is the form of a matter. Beauty, on the other hand, is the form of the perfection, which stands thus to beauty as matter to form. Therefore, for Schiller, freedom is the immediate ground of beauty, and technique merely mediately the condition of beauty. Only if the perfect is presented with freedom is it transformed into the beautiful. The following passage is excerpted from the section of Schiller's letter to Corner of February 23, 1793, which is entitled, Freedom is the appearance, is one with beauty. Freedom in the appearance is one with beauty. This translation is taken from Friedrich Schiller, Poet of Freedom, Volume 2, Schiller Institute, Washington, D.C., 1988, pages 512 to 519.
Cool. Thank you, Quan. All right. So that sets the tone. And I love too just how when you read some of these old writings amongst friends, who are just on such a high cultural level, they never intended for a lot of these wonderful ideas to be published. Even they just write beautifully and compositionally, casually in correspondence amongst themselves, and you just see this, and it's anyway, it's like this for so many letters of Leibniz and Ben Franklin. They're like pieces of art unto themselves.
Yeah, and when he wrote that freedom in the appearance is one of, with beauty, it's a little bit what I said half an hour ago when I said that as with object and with people, the quality of simplicity or the quality of being flamboyant or show off is not per se judged by it, but to what extent the person embodies his simplicity or his flamboyance as a natural expression of his mind or of his specific soul. So it is ultimately knowledge of oneself and knowledge of oneself through abiding in infinite awareness, precisely.
Right. Yeah, you can see the difference between somebody who's authentically extravagant versus a poser who really is just
exactly,
trying to,
exactly, exactly. And it might appear unfair but don't be flamboyant if your soul is not.
Right.
Okay, so you better work on your soul to make your soul flamboyant first, and after express it rather than fake it until you make it, because in matter of soul you cannot fake it until you make it. You rather work on your soul, and it will express spontaneously as what you are.
Good thought. All right. So this is going to be a slightly longer read, not too long. I mean, the whole thing is 20 pages, frankly. So by next week, we'll have this whole thing done. But for On the Beautiful, who would like to be today's reader? And keep in mind, right, these four categories or four theories of what the beautiful is, how to judge it. Really important to have this in mind and think about which one or ones were dealt with in a certain way by Plato in the Philebus earlier. And I would say,
If no one wants to do it, I can, but I'm French, so it may sound quite bad.
You know what I mean, Matt? I'll happily volunteer.
No, but
I like the exoticness of it.
I don't mind who is reading, but I think it's not a question of accent. It's a question of how clear you pronounce.
Yeah.
Oh, I can try.
How about this? Try a couple of pages, see how you feel. If it feels organic and you're receiving also, because I know some people they can read pretty well, but sometimes they don't think as much about what they're reading when they're doing it out loud versus when they're silent. So see how you feel, and let's do one or two pages, and we'll go from there.
Okay, so Caelias are on the Beautiful, translated by William F. Worth Jr. in Fidelio, Volume 1, Number 4, Winter 1992. An object is perfect when everything manifold in it accords with the unity of its concept. It is beautiful when its perfection appears as nature. The beauty increases when the perfection becomes more complex and the nature suffers nothing thereby. For the task of freedom becomes more difficult with the increasing number of compounds and its fortunate resolution, therefore even more astonishing. Is it okay?
I can understand you, yeah.
If you understand, it's all good.
Yeah.
Okay. Regularity, order, proportion, perfection, properties, in which one so long believed to have found beauty, have nothing to do with the same at all. However, where order, proportion, etc., belong to the nature of a thing, as with everything organic, there they are also by this itself inviolable. It's not an easy sentence there. But not on the violation of proportion is ugly.
But not on account of themselves.
On account of themselves, but rather because they are inseparable from the nature of the thing. A grave violation of proportion is ugly, but not because observation of proportion is beauty. Not at all, but rather because it is a violation of nature, therefore indicates heteronomy. I observe in general that the whole error of those who sought beauty in proportion or in perfection derives therefrom. They found that the violation of the same made the object ugly, from which they drew the conclusion against all logic, that beauty is contained in the exact observation of these properties. But all these properties makes merely the material of the beautiful, which can change in any object. They can belong to the truth, which also is only the material of beauty. The form of the beauty of the beautiful is only a free utterance of the truth, of regularity, of perfection.
Okay, so far, so how do people feel about the idea content, what's being said, and also are we able to follow pretty well, or
easy to follow?
Okay.
And maybe one piece of advice when reading,
Yes.
and I know this is very challenging, even for an English speaker. This sort of literature is challenging.
There's some words.
When there's a comma, maybe take a breath for a little bit of a gap. And when there's the end of a sentence, take a breath. Like have
even in
pauses.
French, I rarely take a breath.
Yeah.
That's maybe a why. Okay. So I keep on.
Sure, yeah.
Or
Go
do
slow.
we
Yeah, keep go a little bit longer.
okay. Okay. We call a building perfect when all the parts of the same are arranged according to the concept and the purpose of the whole and its form as it being purely determined through its ideas. We name it beautiful, however, when we need to take this idea as help. In order to understand the form, when it seems to spring forth voluntarily and unintentionally from itself, and all parts to be confined through themselves. A building can, for this reason, to speak parenthetically, never be an entirely free artwork and never achieve an ideal of beauty because it at the least is impossible in respect to a building which needs steps, door, chimney, windows, and oven to suffice without help of a concept, and therefore to conceal heteronomy. Therefore, only that beauty of art can be completely pure, whose origin is found in nature itself.
The term heteronomy is kind of like the
Heteronomy.
yeah, no, yeah, no, you pronounced it pretty well. It's for those who may not have encountered this, nomi is like the name of something.
Comme hétérogène.
Hetero is different, huh? Heterogène, yeah.
No,
Hétérogène.
Uh,
heteronomy here is in opposition to autonomy. So autonomy is having one's own law, and heteronomy is not having one's own law precisely.
oh, that's an interesting way to do it. Okay,
Okay, that
okay.
nomi is from nomos. Okay, law in the sense of inner law.
Okay. Okay, so that was I had a different idea. That's good. So in this case, the he's speaking about how every creation in this case a building sh stems forth from an idea. You have an idea of the oneness of the building, and then all of the parts, right, have to sort of it works. It's more beautiful if all of the parts are harmonious with that one idea of the whole. And if they're less harmonious, if they're out of whack, it's less beautiful. But he's also saying that you'll never be absolutely free, keeping in mind that freedom is still the basis upon which we judge the beautiful, not its symmetry or its tempo, but the degree to which it expresses its natural freedom. It'll never be 100% free because as a building, it's still built with a purpose, right? You have to open the door. It has utility that you wouldn't necessarily find elsewhere. So it can't be 100% free, but it doesn't mean it won't be beautiful either, right? He's not trying to say it that
And
way.
once again, I'm sorry to be a pain in the neck with that example, but I think that example would make people remember. Okay, the truly simple person has his inner law as simplicity and would express it as simplicity in his outer manifestation. Okay, and that is autonomy. But if a show-off person would pose as a simple person, it would show for aware people because his inner law is not simplicity. There you have heteronomy, meaning that he's acting out of outer influences and not from his soul.
Mm. Mm-hmm.
Good distinction, Kwan.
Right. He wants to be
Yes.
seen a certain way, so he's projecting that which he wants to be seen as instead of it actually organically coming from him or
Yeah,
herself. Yeah.
yeah, because you can be in a group in which simplicity would be the supreme value, for example. And if you are a natural flamboyant, a show-off person, and you don't want to express what you are, but you try to imitate the supreme value of the group because you want to be accepted in that group, for example. Well, the truly simple person in that group will see you very clearly as a poser.
Right.
I keep on.
Sure. Yeah. Go nice and slow.
A vessel is beautiful when it, without contradicting its concept, looks like a free play of nature. The handle to a vessel is merely there due to the use. Therefore, through a concept, however, should the vessel be beautiful, then this handle must spring forth therefrom, so unforced and voluntarily. That one forgets its determination. However, if it goes off in a right angle, if the white belly narrows suddenly to a narrow neck and the like, then will this abrupt change of direction destroy all appearance of voluntariness, and the autonomy of appearance will disappear. Okay. When indeed does one say that a person is beautifully clothed, when neither the clothing through the body nor the body through the clothing suffers anything in respect to its freedom, when it looks as if it had not to change nothing with the body and yet fulfills its purpose to be completest. Completest?
Yeah. One thing I would try out is,
Yeah.
have you ever read like a bedtime story to a child?
um, I told my kids stories when they were young, but I'm not reading stuff. I'm telling stories,
Oh, you're
real life
telling. Have you
stories,
ever read
things
them?
I
Have you ever
did,
read them?
things I.
Have you ever read them a book? Like or read them a story?
Yeah, we read together every night from 9 to 9:30. But I read my stuff and they read they're old.
Okay,
They're
okay.
too old for me to read
My
them. And
point
when I was
was,
kid, I
imagine we're a bunch of kids uh at your at your feet, and you're reading us a story. So then that way the intention is going to come out a little bit with the intonation that you choose when you ask a question or emphasize a word over another word. So think about it as you're conveying the meaning as you're
okay,
reading to
I
us.
can try.
Yeah.
I can try. I'm not a good reader.
You know, it's all
That's why
muscle. It's all muscles that we're practicing.
I need to train these.
Yeah.
Okay. When indeed does one say that I read this one, I think
Do it again. Do it again. It's
we're
okay.
okay.
But ask it like a question.
Okay. When indeed does one say that a person is beautifully clothed, when neither the clothing through the body nor the body through the clothing suffer anything in respect to its freedom, when it looks as if it had to change nothing with the body and yet fulfills its purpose to the completest. Beauty, or rather taste, regards all things as a self-end and by no means tolerates that one serves the other as means, or bear the yoke. Is it a little better?
Yeah,
I'm
it's
not
good.
so sure.
Yeah. Dude, keep it slow.
Okay. In the aesthetical world, every natural being is a free citizen who has equal rights with the most noble and may not once be compelled for the sake of the whole, but rather must absolutely consent to everything. In the aesthetical world, which is entirely different than the most perfect Platonic republic, even the coat, which I carry on my body, demands respect from me for its freedom and desires from me, like an ashamed servant, that I let no one notice that it serves me. For that reason, however, it also promised me reciprocally to employ its freedom so modestly that mine suffers nothing thereby. And when both keep their word, so will the whole world say that I be beautifully dressed. If the coat strains, on the other hand, then do we both. The coat and I lose our freedom. For this reason, do all quite tight and quite loose kinds of clothing have equally little beauty, for not considering that both limit the freedom of movement. So the body in tight clothing shows its figure only at the expense of the cloth. And with loose clothing, the coat conceals the figure of the body, in that it blows itself up with its own figure and diminishes its masters to its mere bearer.
I love this. A real platonic method of analyzing fashion. This is the first time I'd ever seen this, and I just enjoy that a lot because you could imagine, right, different styles of people walking around with foolishly tight clothes that constrain them. And we've seen that just walking down the streets of Montreal or wherever, and people who have just overly baggy clothes.
Spandex.
Spandex can really move though. You can do some athletic
Yeah,
stuff with
yeah,
spandex. It doesn't constrict.
yeah, yeah.
Not like those tight jeans that people have had to use wrenches to, or not wrenches, pliers to get to close up, or super poofy, overly loose clothing too that we've also seen falling off people's asses.
Can't help but think of the French pole vaulter, Matt. Had he been wearing different clothing, for example, maybe his schlong wouldn't have knocked the bar
Yeah,
off.
maybe. Maybe.
Yeah,
Spandex, mate. Spandex.
but the young people wearing pants who are on the verge of falling, uh, most of them didn't know that fashion is coming from prisons
Mm.
Yeah.
because the inmates in prison who are rather on the receptive end would show to the guy on the giving end their polarity, let's say.
Hmm. Yep. Right. Well
Whenever I
said.
see somebody in the street
I
wearing
think
pants
that
like that,
I think that
sorry,
I think that I expressed that very delicate subject
That's
with
very
yeah,
technical words that were not obscene. No, so
no, it's very diplomatic, very poetically diplomatic for such an obscene concept.
let's put it down to a marketing exercise.
Yeah.
For me, it's a reading exercise.
Yeah,
Good.
yeah.
I think I will have the other one quite good. I've already read it in my. A birch tree, a spruce, a poplar is beautiful when it climbs slenderly aloft, an oak when it grows crooked. The reason is because the latter, left to itself, loves the crooked. The former, on the contrary, loves the direct course. If the oak shows itself slender and the birch bent, then are they both not beautiful? Because their direction betray alien influence, alien heteronomy. If the poplar, on the contrary, be bent by the wind, then we find this beautiful again because it expresses its freedom through its swaying movement. Which tree will the painter like most to seek out in order to use it in a landscape? Certainly that one which makes use of the freedom which is permitted it with all the technique of its construction, which does not act slavishly in accordance to its neighbor, but rather, even with some boldness, ventures something, step out of its order, turns wilfully hither and thither, even when it must right here cause a breach, there disarrange something through its stormy interference. To that one, on the other hand, which always persevere in the same direction, even when its species allow it far more freedom, whose branches remain in rank and files. As if they were pulled by a string, Willie passes over with indifference. Sorry for the phone. I'm put it on mute. Okay. In respect to any great composition, it is necessary that the individual be limited in order to let the whole take effect. If this limitation of the individual at the same time be an effect of its freedom, example,
Mhm.
EA is example in English?
Yes.
Okay.
meaning.
Meaning.
Yes.
Okay, meaning.
It in Latin is it es meaning.
It is. Oh, thanks.
But in English, when you see it, you simply say either the meaning or IE.
Okay, I'd say meaning. Okay. If it's at this limit itself, then the composition is beautiful. Beauty is through itself subdued power, limitation out of power.
Yeah, and keep in mind the ideas of the Phaedo of the Phalebus regarding the finite and the infinite and the bounded, how they always coexist, but it is the boundedness that creates a determinant on harmony. That without boundedness we have no harmony, right? So if you just have a line that's forever extended with no limit, that line can never be a string that can be divided in half. It can never be divided in a fifth or a third or a fourth. So we always look for the bounded realm is where the concept and the ability to discern harmoniousness emerges conceptually.
Boundaries makes me think of that French saying, la liberté de quelqu'un débute ou termine où celle de l'autre débute. Je sais pas si ça vous dit.
Oui, oui.
Yeah,
Also,
yeah. Well, yes, my
when
freedom
he
stops
says
when the freedom of someone starts.
Yeah, exactly in English.
But
Yeah.
that question of boundary makes me give two examples, which in my mind are crystal clear. Okay, the dance between the finite and the infinite. You only have a certain number of finite musical notes, but from that set of finite musical notes, you can produce, you can create an infinite series of musical compositions. Okay, same with poetry. Okay,
Oh,
for example, uh, a French poem called Alexandrin. You have 12 meters or 12 syllables in an Alexandrin, but from that finite room of poetic composition, you can produce or create an infinite number of poems.
like
So,
I
sorry,
put the
go.
17 syllable.
Yes, exactly. The meter, okay, le mètre in French, okay, the number of syllables in a certain kind of poem. And those two examples in my mind are obvious for everyone concerning the dance or the dialectics between the finite dimension in us and the infinite dimension or infinite reality in us.
Mm-hmm. Hmm.
Okay.
Beautiful.
I keep at landscape.
Yes. Yes.
Okay. A landscape is beautifully composed when all individual parts of which it consists so play into one another, that each sets its own limits, and the whole is therefore the result of the freedom of the individual. Everything in a landscape should be referred to the whole, and everything individual should seem nevertheless to stand only under its own rule, to follow its own will. It is, however, impossible that the agreement to a whole requires no sacrifice on the part of the individual, since the collision of freedom is unavoidable. We're talking about boundaries.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. The mountain may want, therefore, to cast a shadow on many things, which one wants to have lighted. Building will limit the natural freedom, curb the view. The branches will be burdensome neighbors. Man, animals, clouds wants to move, for the freedom of the living express itself only in action. The river will accept in its course no law from the bank, but rather follow its own. In short, each individual desires to have its will, where, however, remains now the harmony of the whole, when each concerns itself only for itself. It's a question, sorry. Just therefrom does it follow that each out of inner freedom directly prescribe itself the limitation which the other needs. In order to express its freedom, a tree in the foreground could cover a beautiful part in the hinterground. To compel it that it not do that would be to violate its freedom and betray bungling. What, therefore, does the intelligent artist do? He let that branch of the tree, which threatens to cover the hinterground of its own weight, sink down, and therefore makes room voluntarily to the rear prospect. And so the tree accomplishes the will of the artist, in that it merely follows its own.
Right. So you have a natural you'll never get perfection. I love that idea that when you're doing a landscape, everything is in motion. You're drawing a river. A river's nature is to be in motion, but the nature of the painting medium prevents that from expressing itself in the pure way. So you can get close to it, but as an artist, and you could I guess you could say fail if you have like a stiff lake. Some people, we've just seen bad painters who don't have a feeling for the organic flow of things, who just make a very like
Ah,
lake that looks like crystal stiff and it's not in motion, versus the better, more aware artist who's able to get across that feeling of movement. And you can also cause a tree that might be covering a beautiful background mountain. You could choose to move the branch down, but still make the branch look as organic as it naturally is, even though it's Yeah, so there's choices we make, but also that express that don't diminish the freedom of the landscape that we're painting.
Yeah,
So
absolutely. And there's even a civilization called the Chinese civilization, for which art is only the expression of the dynamic natural movements of nature,
Right.
and calligraphy, how you judge a calligraphy is precisely how the dynamism has been manifest in time rather than for the beauty, the physical beauty in time, but rather how it translated the timeless dynamism that has manifested in time.
That's amazing, Quan. It's true. You don't really see a tradition of like realism in the artistic style in the Chinese paintings, but yet,
Oh yeah, it exists. It
yeah,
exists, man. But
I don't
it's
see it.
yes, but because you have to see the painting in the temples or the portraits of official, or what
Oh,
I
the
call,
portraits, yeah, right. I was thinking for
but
landscapes.
not only for the portrait, also the painting of the mansions of the aristocracy and so on. But those paintings are not considered as art. Those paintings are considered as interior decoration.
Oh, hmm.
Okay, so
Excuse me.
there is a tradition of interior decoration in China, but it's not art.
Huh. Huh. So the art
And
is
in the book,
always, would you say the art always expresses movement in that sense?
well, art is to bring timelessness in time.
Okay.
So, so when, for example, you paint in technically correctly the mansion of a wealthy person or of an official with the people in the mansions, that is the realistic school,
Yep.
if you want. And under the Ming Dynasty, under the Qing Dynasty, under the Tang Dynasty, you have plenty of that. And also in the Buddhist temple, you have the representation of mythological characters, but set in realistic frameworks. Uh, it exists, but it's considered as interior decoration. It can be interior decoration for palaces, of course. It can be magnificent, but it's not art.
Mm, yes. Hmm.
I think a good comparison here, if you like, is the two examples that we started off with, Matt, the Japanese garden and I'll call it the Australian garden because it reminded me of gardens that I had myself. The Japanese garden, for example, I mean, hard to know whether the whole thing is contrived, but every part of that picture that you saw, as Jean Sebastian even alluded to, that reflections on the water, has captured everything that you would want in that scene. And contrived or not, there seem, you can see the individuality of certain aspects of it quite clearly. You can see the interrelationship of everything, natural proportion, etc. Whereas the Australian one is some of the plants and flowers there have to struggle, if you like, for their individuality in a different kind of a way.
Hmm.
I think in all of this discussion, the word that keeps coming in the back of my mind that I'm going to have to try and understand a little bit more is Schiller's concept of freedom.
Hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah.
If I may be another time a pain in the neck, think to the guy, the flamboyant guy versus the simple guy.
Mm.
Is there harmony in their soul with the expression of how they manifest to others, or there is no harmony?
Yeah,
Okay.
that's great.
And that harmony is precisely freedom. Okay. The flamboyant guy who is truly flamboyant in his soul wouldn't be flamboyant, notwithstanding the judgment of others that he completely ignores. And because he's naturally flamboyant, the others might even judge him interesting because they feel perfectly his self confidence. And the simple guy who is truly simple would be also admired by others because the others would feel his self confidence in his simplicity. But when that harmony is not there, he would appear gauche, and the
Hmm.
other would not hesitate to bring him down.
Right. Yeah, I think that idea of the internal, like that there is a nature to everything. So every quality in existence has a purpose. Nothing is without purpose in nature on a lower level. Like you're talking about and humans are part of nature, right? So there's a purpose to these attributes. Um, but if you like a bee will be different from a housefly, will be different from a frog, right? So there are attractions, there's yearnings that they all have that are natural to themselves to maintain a process. They couldn't have come into to being independently of a whole process, a whole system that they're harmonious with, that they evolved with alongside it. They didn't evolve as an individual outside of a broader system. And so, if you think about always things from the standpoint of purpose and what things yearn for and desire as part of satisfying that ability to express that purpose, then you could apply a whole set of standards to art as far as thinking about, well, what would guide an artist through their judgments of improving as a musician or as a painter or as a whatever, or as an architect, using these standards that we can discover in nature but now apply for that higher thing to bring out the natural
Yeah.
thing that everything has within it.
And what is the natural thing? Okay.
Mm.
I'm sorry sometimes that I might sound a little bit off the subject, but it's not off the subject. Okay. And I will try to make my point. I would like to read the first line of one Chinese classic, which is called the Zhongyong, that most of the time is translated as Doctrine of the Mean, but I think the translation is absolutely shit. The translation of Zhongyong is living center in infinite awareness. Okay, and the first line is, what has been ordained by heaven is our nature. To lead by our nature is called the Tao, and to cultivate the Tao is called the teaching. It might sound a little bit strange that I make the rapprochement with that kind of stuff with how you dress. But how you dress, and I think that Schiller is perfectly right to talk about those things, how you dress is a center precisely in your infinite awareness. The more you can be playful and the more you can let express what you are at the level of your individuality. Okay, and here I will make another parenthesis which I think is relevant. In classical psychodynamics, we distinguish between the personality, the individuality, and infinite awareness. And the notion of freedom that Schiller is bringing is precisely that, in my own words, and because of my Chinese upbringing, when you are centered in infinite awareness, meaning at the highest level of energy, you can use the different mass of your personality as you want. And among those mass, you would have one, two, three mass that would be your favorite ones. And those favorite ones would be your individuality. And when people see you, they say, oh, it's him. Okay, because you will manifest yourself more often than other with your favorite mask, meaning with your individuality, but you are also capable to use the mask of the personality if you wish so and if the context is appropriate. But you will be capable to do so if you are rooted in infinite awareness.
I have to think about that some more. I could think about it from the standpoint. I'd taken some acting courses some years back, and I have a certain sense of the idea of putting on a personality that is authentic but doesn't lose yourself. Like that isn't necessarily you per se, but it isn't not you either. Like you can't go full method and lose control of yourself if you want to be a good actor. So there is that authenticity you always have to have. But then I don't know. I can you give some examples of like these several masks that somebody might develop for themselves? I mean, are they all
Yes,
themselves? Are they all the same person in the sense of them authentically being the same personality, or what would that look like?
absolutely. Because let's go to once again to the etymology of personality. Okay,
Yeah.
personality comes from persona, per through sona, the sound. Okay, So though you had some interaction with your father when you was 3 years old, you have some interaction that you remember, okay, because it was something special, either positively or negatively. You have some interaction with your mother when you were 5, and you remember because it was positive or negative. You got an interaction with a favorite friend when you were 7. Each of those memories is a mask, okay? You experience some emotion, some overture into reality in time and timelessness at each of those events, because we don't remember our life at every second or even at every day. Our life is a reconstruction of from the events which provoke enough emotions, either positive or negative. Each of those events create an inner voice, a persona, a personality. So all the meaningful events, positive or negative, created a memory in you that I call a mask or personality. When you are rooted in infinite awareness, you see all the layers of memories that is made by your life. And because you are rooted in infinite awareness, you know that some of those masks, most of the time, the positive one, are your favorite ones. And those favorites are your individuality, okay? The usual appearance under which most people would recognize and acknowledge you because of the way you talk, because of the way you express yourself, because of the way you dress, because of the way you interact with people. That is your individuality. Not everyone has an individuality, because those who did not, let's use the modern word, did not go through a psychotherapy. And having a psychotherapy is not necessarily with a doctor, a psychologist, or psychotherapist. You can have a psychotherapy because you read Plato, for example. Okay, if you read Plato in an intelligent manner, it is a mirror that shows, first, that you have something that is called infinite awareness. Two, that there are memories that are accumulated in your mind, in your inferior mind, in your animal mind, that you can be aware of, so you can construct your individuality. Okay, a simple way to say individuality is do your things. Okay, because your personality are the different inner voices which have been given to you by people having a certain influence over you during a certain time of your life. Those are memories that are accumulated most of the time unconsciously and subconsciously. When you are rooted in what has been ordained by heaven is called your nature, meaning infinite awareness, you are capable to shed light on those memories and to choose some that you prefer. And those masks that you prefer wouldn't be your individuality. And there you are a complete man having your 3 layers. Remember, oh, I have it here. Remember the character, Chinese character Wang King? You have the vertical line, which is infinite awareness, connecting the first horizontal line, the personality, the second horizontal line, the individuality, and the last horizontal lines with this infinite awareness, but expressed in time, okay? Because infinite awareness as timeless reality is the vertical line. So that's why you have 3 horizontal lines. You have the memories as personality, but once you learn how to be in infinite awareness expressed in time, the top horizontal line, you will be capable to express yourself individually, meaning the middle line, which is the personality. If you remember, the first horizontal line is earth, the second one is man, and the third one is heaven.
Yeah.
When you have your individuality, you are true man.
Yeah, I can see
Or
that. I can see it.
To be precise, you are a true man when you have the three lines connected by the timeless awareness, which is the vertical line. Okay, so I cannot resist to talk about that because that's the Chinese version of Schiller.
Mm. Would you say that some people, when you said that some people don't have individuality, do you mean that they had some people have very little or weak individuality, or some people simply don't have any at all?
Let's say that I would say that in reality, most of the time, people that we would call not having individuality would have very, very weak individuality. Okay.
Okay. Yeah.
I never met in my life someone that is completely just a bunch of
Just a,
personality. Okay.
right. Okay.
That that would be an extreme case, but that is theoretically possible. But I would say that even people with very low infinite awareness would have enough awareness to have some kind of recognizable pattern of behavior and appearance.
There's something to build on. There's something to work with.
Yes, there's
Okay.
something to build on. I
All
would
right.
say that
Okay.
I never met someone having zero individuality, even if they might show a very weak individuality.
And is there something that you think is as the person grows to that higher state of awareness, but they're not there yet. They're maybe very far from that. Is there something of the personality which is contained in the earliest stages of unawareness all the way through to the state of much more actualized awareness? Or is there something completely shifted or transformed along the way that was not contained anymore in the or previously in the lower states?
Well, I think that is the answer is precisely in what we read in Schiller and in the graph of the king. Not everyone is, well, once again, I show the character because my explanation is going to be based on the character, okay? So it's an easy character, three horizontal lines with one vertical line connecting the three horizontal lines. The perfectly healthy man is always centered in the vertical line, okay? Meaning that he lives his life centered in his timeless reality. So imagine that someone having a weak individuality would have a vertical line that is trembling, okay? He's not always perfectly synchronous with that vertical timeless reality. That is the goal of meditation, making you always rooted in that verticality.
Mm.
Because when you are perfectly synchronous with that verticality, that you are free, okay? Because freedom is precisely first to be aware that you have that vertical infinite awareness and that is free and that it has been given to you at birth. But not everyone has been told that, okay, for different reasons.
Sure. Yeah.
And what is the essential teaching of the philosopher is that you have that timeless reality in you. And once you know that, it's 50% of the job has been done because it's like a thirsty person that would taste some water. Wow, he knows that water exists, that he wants to go back to the well again and again and again. And that is the long process that I call meditation. Or maybe it's better to say space of infinite awareness. Because meditation in English is not a good word to translate that space of infinite awareness. Because to meditate upon something in English means to think, to ponder upon something. And it's not a question of using your mechanical and animal mind, okay? Using thinking. It's a question of be rooted in that space of infinite awareness. So it's longer to say that meditation or meditate, but I prefer to be exact rather than to save some words. So the learning to be rooted in that space of infinite awareness, first you have to be told that it exists. Two, you have to taste it for first time. And three, all your life would be an adventure to be center more and more and more and more. And when you always center in that verticality, you can be killed, of course, but nothing can disturb you. Okay?
Mm.
Except for the fact that someone can kill you, but that is part of life. Infinite awareness will not protect you against a murderer, but infinite awareness will give you your true life and practically you will be perfectly swag and cool in all situations, or almost all situations. Let's say 95% of the time.
All right. Cool.
Um,
Sounds like it's dancing with the sublime idea a little bit there. We're getting towards that. Was that
uh,
Paul? Or yeah, I think or no, maybe it was Jean Sebastien.
Talking about disturbance, my mom just came to me, and I will have to go phone for some urgent matter. And I just heard Paul talking. He got that sweet British accent. So could he take over me, and I'll be back in like 5 minutes or 10 Big Macs. Gonna get the dogs out at the same time.
All right.
Sorry for that.
All right, you British chap.
It,
You ready? You ready? You British chap to read?
Well, as an Aussie, I'm going to take
I don't
offence
know
at
if it's
that. I'm
British,
not
but
British.
it sounds like
Australian, mate.
Australian.
Yeah.
Oh, it sounds as beautiful as the British accent.
I was
Both
to
I like.
if I was to hold this class in London, everybody would call me a yobbo.
Oh boy. Well, thank you. If you can take over me, I'll be back as
Sure,
soon as
sure, sure,
possible.
sure.
All right, Paul.
So, shall I continue?
Do it.
Okay. A versification is beautiful when each individual verse gives itself its length and brevity, its movement and points of rest. Each rhyme offers itself out of inner necessity and yet comes as called. Briefly, when no word takes notice of the other, no verse of the other, merely seems to be there on account of itself, and yet everything so turns out as if it were agreed upon. I agree with Jean Sebastien. Tough sentences. Why is the naive beautiful? Because the nature therein asserts its right over affectation and disguise. When Virgil wants to let us cast a glance into the heart of Dido and wants to show us how far it has come with her love, so would he have been able to say this quite well as storyteller in his own name. But then this presentation would also not have been beautiful. However, when he lets us make this discovery through Dido herself, without her having the intention, so as to act uprightly towards us, see the discussion between Anna and Dido at the beginning of the 4th book, then we name this truly beautiful, for it is nature itself which gives away the secret. The mode of teaching is good where one advances from the known to the unknown. It is beautiful when it is Socratic, i.e., when it asks the same truths from within the head and heart of the listener. With the first, its convictions are demanded from the understanding formally. With the second, they are enticed from it. Why is the wavy line held to be the most beautiful? I have especially tested my theory in respect to this most simple of all aesthetical tasks, and I hold this demonstration for this reason to be crucial. Because with this simple task, no deception can take place through incidental causes. A wavy line, the followers of Baumgarten can say, is for this reason the most beautiful, because it is sensuously perfect. It is a line which always changes its direction, multiplicity, and always returns again in the same direction, unity. Were it, however, beautiful from no better ground, then the following line would also have to be so, which certainly is not beautiful. Here also is alteration of direction, a manifold, namely A, B, C, D, E, F, G, H, I, and a unity of direction is here also, which the understanding thinks into and which is represented through the line KL. This line is not beautiful, even though it is sensuously perfect. The following line, however, is a beautiful line, or it could surely be if my pen were better. Now the entire difference between this second and the former is merely this, that the former changes its direction abruptly, whereas the latter unnoticeably. The difference of their effects upon the aesthetical feeling must therefore be grounded in this single observable difference of their properties. What, however, is a suddenly altered direction other than one violently altered? Nature loves no jump. If we see it make one, then it shows that violence has occurred to it. On the contrary, only that movement appears voluntary to which one can assign no determined point in which it changed its, to which one can assign no determined point in which it changed its direction. And this is the case with a wavy line, which is distinguished from the above portrayed merely through its freedom. I could accumulate sufficient further examples in order to show that all that we call beautiful gains this predicate merely through the freedom in its technique. But in respect to the proof advanced, it may by now be enough, because beauty therefore adheres to no material, but rather consists merely in the treatment. However, everything which represents the sense can appear technical or not technical, free or not free. So it follows therefrom that the region of the beautiful extends quite far, because reason in everything, which sensuousness and understanding immediately represents to it, can and must ask about freedom. For this reason, the realm of taste is a realm of freedom. The beautiful world of sense is the happiest symbol of how the moral one shall be, and every beautiful natural being outside of me is a happy citizen who calls out to me, "Be free as I." Therefore, we are disturbed by every forcing trace of the despotic hand of man in a free region of nature. Therefore, by all compulsion of the dancing instructor in the walk and in the posture. Therefore, by each affectation in customs and manners. Therefore, by any roughness in behaviour. Therefore, by each offence to natural freedom in constitutions, habits, and laws. It is striking how good fashion, beauty of behaviour, is developed from my concept of beauty. The first law of good fashion is spare others freedom. The second, show freedom yourself. The punctual fulfillment of both is an infinitely difficult problem, but good fashion requires it continuously, and it alone makes the complete man of the world. I know no more suitable image for the ideal of beautiful behaviour than a well-performed English dance composed from many complicated figures. The spectator from the gallery sees innumerable movements which cross one another most vividly and alter their direction briskly and playfully, yet never knock into one another. Everything is so ordered that the one has already made room when the other arrives. Everyone fits so skillfully and yet again so artlessly into one another that each seems to follow only his own head and yet never steps in the way of the other. It is the most suitable emblem of the asserted self-freedom and the spared freedom of the other. Everything which one usually calls harshness is nothing other than the opposite of the free. It is this harshness that often deprives intellectual greatness, often even the moral of its aesthetical value. Good fashion does not forgive even the most magnificent merit this brutality, and virtue itself is only worthy of love through beauty. However, a character, an action is not beautiful if it show the sensuousness of man, whom it befits, under the compulsion of the law, or constrain the sensuousness of the spectator. In this case, they will merely still respect, but not favour, not inclination. Mere respect abases him who feels it. Hence Caesar pleases us far more than Cato, Cimon more than Phocion, Thomas Jones far more than Grandison. Hence it follows that often merely emotional actions please us more than purely moral ones, because they show voluntariness, because they are achieved through nature, the emotional state, not through the categorical reason against the interest of nature. Hence it may be that the mild virtues please us more than the heroic, the womanly so often more than the manly. For the womanly character, even the most perfect, can never act other than from inclination.
Yeah, absolutely beautiful.
And it's
It is.
Because
I
Yes,
understand why Sebastian was Jean Sebastian was sort of struggling a little bit reading it because it's sometimes, as you said, Matthew, take a pause every time there's a comma. If I do that, I'm going to lose the sense of meaning of the sentence quite often in my mind.
Yeah. It was more, that was more
It's
for
just
Sebastien Jean Sebastien's
yeah,
specific
yeah, sure,
needs.
sure.
It
But it
wasn't for
is,
as
it
yeah.
is this one. To me, reading it kind of. I'm not going to say it doesn't flow, but it flows differently to, let's say, some of the Platonic writings we've been reading.
Yes.
I have to admit, even if it's a English translation, you can see that Schiller is maybe a little more an artist than Plato, even
Yeah,
if I have a weakness for Plato.
Yeah.
yeah, yeah.
Well, and I've had German readers who've read Schiller in the original make a point to me that he's extremely elevated as a speaker. In German, it's very challenging. So to get a translation of an already
Yeah.
extremely difficult text into English must have been quite the challenge for the translator as well. So yeah,
To
totally
do a good
understandable.
reading of something like this, knowing that this is going to go up, in perpetuity online, to get a good reading, it would be good to read it first before attempting to just free read like I'm doing now.
That's
I
true.
haven't seen it before. I'm simply reading the sentences as they come up. I think I could prepare for it a little bit.
Yeah, but I have the pretension that if you read slowly,
Yeah,
respecting the commas, you
you
have the
get there.
time to
Yeah, yeah,
understand before the
yeah,
end of the comma.
yeah, yeah. Yeah.
And
I mean, I'm not having any trouble understanding the intent and everything like that. It's just
yes,
the way in which the prose is coming out of my mouth. It's kind of like I'm sort of stumbling over things that I normally wouldn't.
Mhm.
yeah, yeah.
Sure.
And I would say that this last paragraph is precisely his
Yeah,
definition of freedom. All right.
yeah.
Action, emotions, and conceptualization.
Hmm.
And that is precisely that the unity of time and timelessness that is freedom.
Mhm. Yeah.
Yeah,
I
interesting concepts. Interesting concepts.
yeah.
I would say, for someone that is very used to meditation, I would say that in the West, Schiller is probably the guy that is the closest to that.
Mm.
Really? You
Very strangely. Oh, yeah. Oh, yeah. If I have to, let's say, if I have to introduce Westerners to meditation, but trying to find something from the true Western tradition, I would choose Schiller.
So you would encourage them to begin reading Schiller and just try to get into that mode, like that emotional mental mode that you think would just naturally come as people begin to read more and more Schiller? Or what type of advice would you
Yes,
give them?
yes, yes.
Uh,
Because once again, okay, from the mind perspective, the fundamental division or the fundamental dance is between time and timelessness, or speaking with the technical words of epistemology, is between episteme and doxa. And episteme is infinite awareness. Episteme is most of the time translated as knowledge. But once again, it's a wrong translation. Episteme is infinite awareness, and doxa, of course, most of the time is translated as opinion. But where those opinions come from? From the construction of the words, of the sentences, of the dominant culture of your society, of the people having given you your different inner voices or mask. Okay, so that stark distinction between timelessness and time of being and becoming or using the old Plato words, episteme and doxa, is the absolute introduction into that space of pure awareness. Because if you remember, I made often my speech on the aristocratic education. The aristocratic education at its center is precisely the discovery of the dance of episteme and doxa. Or if you want, if I use the Chinese graph of king, is the discovery of the vertical line at the center of the manifestation in time of your life as personality, individuality, and universal consciousness, but as expressed in time. Okay, that's why there's a difference between the top horizontal line, universal consciousness as expressed in time, and the vertical line, because that vertical line symbolically represents infinite awareness in timelessness. And all Schiller is a development of the character king in Chinese. Okay, how that infinite awareness, the vertical line, can be at the center of your life, manifesting as your personality, your individuality, and universal consciousness as expressed in time, or poetically, earth, man, and heaven. And each of the horizontal line correspond to two lines of the hexagram, okay? Because let's not forget that the hexagram is a schematic representation of the layers of the mind, okay? And the first horizontal line of king corresponds to 1 and 2 of the hexagram, meaning the sense perception and the intellect. The line of man, meaning the middle line of the character Wang, king, correspond to the heart mind or the psyche. And the first line of the mind powers of justice. And finally, the last horizontal line corresponds to 5 and 6, the mind powers of valor and humanity, and the mind's power of wisdom. Okay, so man is the middle line of king, but corresponding to 3 and 4. And that's interesting because man is torn, or torn is maybe a little bit too dramatic. Man is the person, the living being, having a foot in time or in the animal kingdom, and a foot in timelessness or the infinite awareness kingdom. That is probably one of the most outstanding definition of man that I can think of. The living being making the union between time and timelessness, between becoming and being, between doxa and episteme. And that union would give rise to freedom. Okay.
Yeah. No, it's an important yeah, exactly. And it's important that this be done, as you pointed out. The freedom aspect is key, because I remember some years back reading Addison's Cato the Elder, that was something which is like a moral piece of good propaganda. It was a play written, and it was performed a lot in the 1780s, 1790s. I don't know if that's the Cato that he's referring to in the text, or if he's referring to the actual figure as a personality of Cato, but probably he's referring to the artistic rendition. Maybe it was Addison's. And even though it was a very moral play, and George Washington had it performed many times for his troops during the war against England, when I read it with Cynthia, it was very bland and stiff and moralizing. It was very, I could see the value when you want to like try to get your troops to be, honor bound and, and do their duty, but it didn't flow organically. Versus another something that may not be as brilliant morally, but yet is authentic in its expression of feeling and of performance and the personalities.
The problem with morality in the style of Kant, of the imperative or the categorical imperative, is that those mumbo jumbo don't take into account that we are creature of flesh.
That's the problem.
As long as you don't take into account that we are made of flesh, it cannot be expressed in reality. Okay, as the character Wang is saying, and I'm sorry always to go back to that because I'm Chinese and I always think spontaneously in Chinese concept. What is magnificent in the character of Wang, meaning sovereign after all, meaning personal sovereignty, philosophically speaking, even if that character also is used to indicate a true political sovereign of a kingdom. But here, in terms of epistemology and of philosophy, we are speaking of a sovereign person. And a sovereign person has his infinite awareness at the center, but lives his life taking into account his flesh dimension. If you don't take into account the flesh dimension, it is simply an imagination. It is a fantasy.
Mm-hmm. Yep. Guys,
it is the kind of thing that the plutocrats would create to manipulate you.
Sure.
Absolutely.
Yep. They're trying pretty hard at the moment.
I got to send this to Nick and Julia, the dancers, and I'm sure they really enjoy this because they've had to dance a lot of very modern, contemporary, ugly things, and they'll be the first to admit it, just to keep their careers going for so long. So in some sense, the whole pandemic crap was a bit of a blessing for them to find a new approach to expressing their art than being stuck in the system at the Grand Ballet de Montréal. But definitely this question of how freedom just has to express itself in playfully as well, and play is the key, right? Play is always the key in all of this to make it work. If you can't be playful, then as Schiller says, you can't be a man, because only man plays in this particularly higher order way. Animals play, but they don't play in the same way as humans do.
They play unconsciously because they don't have a developed mind. So they are not dealing with the anxieties and of the mental problems that we have. So they play like dumb animals as they are, and I have nothing against them. But we are not dumb animals, okay? We talk. I take dumb not only as stupid, but the capacity to talk and the capacity to build concepts. And as you have that capacity to build concepts, meaning that you have the capacity to imagine the arrow of time, you don't have a choice than to go to the space of infinite awareness if you want to be playful, because you cannot be playful when you're endowed with such a brain at the animal kingdom, okay? Because our brain at the animal kingdom is a powerful machine, bio machine, but that bio machine needs to be supervised by a space of infinite awareness. We cannot be dumb animals.
Amen, brother.
Amen to that.
All right, so it's 10 o'clock. I gotta jump onto a call. So this is cool, and glad we ended it. This is really edifying as always. And next week we'll do part 2 of this process, this journey.
It's a different concept. This one,
yeah.
Concept of beauty. It's a little bit different, and that whole idea of freedom that Schiller's defining it there. I'm going to have to give some serious thought to that this week.
Yeah, that's cool. Yeah, it'll be some good. And also read the text, Paul. So you'll read next week. Yeah. So you have the download link in the Substack invite that I sent out.
Yeah,
just
sure.
Download that link.
I try and save all of the documents, Matt. I mean, I emailed you one time because I didn't find the link, but I eventually got that one too. I try and keep all of them.
Okay, cool.
And I will. Okay.
All right. Bye, guys.
Catch you all next week. Hopefully there'll be no rain next week.
Thanks.
All right. Okay, cheerio.
Don't forget to check Little Teapot.
I opened it up. I got it saved. Thank you.
It's funny, eh?
I'll check it out. I didn't watch it yet. I'm going to watch it now. All right. Take care, man.
Yes, you're going to have it.
Okay.
Yeah.
Bye.
Ciao, folks.